baby. This is just a little tiny child that has no way to fight back, no way to, protect herself.
This is a picture drawn by 2-year-old Evangelina Wing. It's a simple drawing, full of the bright colors and innocent joy that should define childhood. But for Evangelina, this picture represents a stark contrast to the horrifying reality she endured. A reality that would tragically end just a few short months after this picture was created. Evangelina Wing was born on January 11, 2012 in the quiet coastal town of Seaside, Oregon. She was a bright and bubbly little girl, full of life and laughter. She loved to sing and dance, and her favorite color was pink. She was the apple of her mother's eye, Dorothy Wing, now known for its beautiful beaches, friendly people, and peaceful atmosphere. It's the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors and children play freely in the streets. But behind the idyllic facade, a dark secret was festering within the walls of a small apartment on the outskirts of town. A young woman struggling to make ends meet as a single parent. Dorothy Wing was a devoted mother, but she was also young and vulnerable. She had recently separated from her husband and was struggling to raise 3 young children on her own. Evangelina, her youngest, was the light of her life, but Dorothy's challenging circumstances made her susceptible to seeking companionship and support, even from the wrong places. In the fall of 2014, Dorothy met Randy Roden online. He was charming and charismatic, and he quickly swept Dorothy off her feet. He seemed like the answer to her prayers, a strong and supportive partner who could help her provide for her children. But what Dorothy didn't know was that Randy Roden had a dark past, a history of violence and abuse that would soon cast a long shadow over her family. Randy Roden was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He had a criminal record that included domestic violence and sexual abuse. He had served time in prison and was on probation at the time he met Dorothy. But he concealed his true nature, presenting himself as a caring and responsible man. Dorothy, desperate for love and support, was blinded to the warning signs. In the beginning, everything seemed perfect. Randy moved in with Dorothy and her children, and he quickly became a father figure to Evangelina and her brothers. He played with them, helped with chores, and provided financial support. But this idyllic facade was a carefully constructed illusion, a mask concealing the monster within. Behind closed doors, a horrifying reality was unfolding. Randy Roden's true nature began to emerge, and Evangelina and her brothers became the victims of his escalating abuse. He would yell, scream, and intimidate them. He would physically punish them for minor infractions, leaving bruises and welts on their small bodies. Evangelina, the youngest and most vulnerable, bore the brunt of Randy's cruelty. He would pinch, bite, and burn her. He would lock her in a cage, depriving her of food and water. He would subject her to unspeakable acts of sexual abuse. Her tiny body became a canvas of pain, a testament to the unimaginable suffering she endured. Dorothy Wing, blinded by her love for Randy and her own vulnerabilities, failed to protect her children. She witnessed the signs of abuse, the bruises, the burns, the fear in her children's eyes, but she chose to ignore them, to believe Randy's lies and excuses. She was trapped in a cycle of fear and manipulation, unable to break free from his control. The abuse continued for months, hidden in plain sight. Neighbors reported hearing screams and cries coming from the apartment, but no one intervened. Teachers noticed bruises on the children, but their concerns were dismissed. The system designed to protect vulnerable children failed Evangelina and her brothers. On December 20, 2014, the unthinkable happened. Evangelina Wing was found unresponsive in her bed. Her tiny body was covered in bruises, burns, and bite marks. She had suffered a broken arm, internal bleeding, and severe head trauma. The autopsy revealed a horrifying pattern of abuse, a litany of injuries inflicted over weeks and months. The police investigation quickly focused on Randy Roden and Dorothy Wing. They were both arrested and charged in connection with Evangelina's death. Rhoden faced charges of murder by abuse, felony murder, manslaughter, assault, and criminal mistreatment. Dorothy Wing was charged with manslaughter and criminal mistreatment for her failure to protect her. Evangelina's death sent shockwaves through the community of Seaside and beyond. People were outraged that such a horrific crime could happen to an innocent child. Vigils were held, memorials were created, and demands for justice were loud and clear. The case highlighted the urgent need for greater awareness and prevention of child abuse. Experts and advocates spoke out about the systemic failures that contributed to Evangelina's death. They called for better training for professionals who work with children, improved communication between agencies, and increased resources for families in need. They stressed the importance of early intervention and the need to believe children when they disclose abuse. Evangelina's story is a tragic one, but it's also a call to action. We can all play a role in preventing child abuse. We can educate ourselves about the signs and symptoms, we can support families in need, and we can speak up when we suspect something is wrong. We can honor Evangelina's memory by creating a world where every child is safe and loved. Evangelina Wing was just 2 years old when her life was tragically cut short, but her story will live on, a reminder of the devastating consequences of child abuse and the urgent need for change. Let us remember Evangelina not for the horror she endured, but for the innocent joy she brought into the world. Let us honor her memory by working together to prevent future tragedies and ensure that every child has the chance to live a life free from fear and violence. This is Evangelina. Born January 11, 2012, she was a bright spark in the lives of those who knew her. Full of energy, with a contagious laugh, she loved to dance and sing along to nursery rhymes. Her favorite toy was a stuffed pink unicorn named Sparkle. Evangelina wasn't an only child. She had 2 older brothers. They were inseparable, a trio of playful siblings always getting into mischief, building forts, sharing snacks, typical childhood adventures. Their mother Dorothy adored her children. She was young herself, only 22 when Evangelina was born. Life hadn't been easy for Dorothy, but she was determined to provide a loving home for her kids. She worked tirelessly to make ends meet, always putting their needs first. Being a single mother of 3 was no easy feat. Dorothy worked tirelessly to provide for her family, often juggling multiple jobs. Money was tight, and there were days when putting food on the table was a struggle. But even with these hardships, Dorothy's love for her children shone through. She was their rock, their protector, their source of comfort and joy. Their apartment wasn't much, but it was home, filled with laughter, messy crayon drawings, and the constant buzz of childhood energy. Dorothy created a warm and loving environment for her children, despite the challenges they faced. She was determined to give them the happy childhood she never had. But Dorothy was also lonely. Raising 3 children on her own took its toll. She longed for adult companionship, for someone to share the burdens and joys of parenthood. She craved love and support, a shoulder to lean on. And that's when she met Randy Roden. Was meeting Randy a chance encounter, a stroke of good fortune, or was it the beginning of a nightmare Dorothy and her children could never have imagined? We'll explore that next. In the fall of 2014, Dorothy, seeking connection and support, turned to the internet. Online dating sites and social media groups offered a way to meet new people, to expand her social circle beyond the demands of single motherhood. That's where she encountered Randy Roden. His profile painted a picture of a man who enjoyed hiking, camping, and spending time with family and friends. He seemed kind, responsible, and eager to settle down. Dorothy was drawn to his apparent stability and his willingness to accept her children as part of the package. Their early conversations were filled with the usual getting-to-know-you chatter. Favorite movies, dreams for the future, shared laughter. Randy was attentive, charming, and quick to offer compliments. He seemed genuinely interested in Dorothy's life and her children. He quickly integrated himself into their lives. He would pick the kids up from school, help with homework, even attend their soccer games. He showered them with gifts and affection, quickly becoming a father figure in their young lives. Dorothy was relieved to have found someone who not only cared for her, but also embraced her children. Randy was also a provider. He had a steady job, and he generously contributed to the household expenses. This was a welcome relief for Dorothy, who had been struggling financially. Randy's presence brought a sense of stability and security to their lives, something they had been lacking. But there were red flags, subtle warning signs that Dorothy, in her eagerness for love and stability, chose to ignore. Randy could be controlling, quick to anger when things didn't go his way. He would isolate Dorothy from her friends and family, insisting that they didn't have her best interests at heart. And then there was his past. A past that Randy kept hidden from Dorothy. A past that included arrests for domestic violence, assault, and even sexual abuse. A past that, if Dorothy had known, would have sent her running for the hills. How did Randy manage to conceal his dark history? And why did Dorothy, despite the warning signs, allow him to become such a dominant force in her and her children's lives? The answers lie ahead, but they paint a disturbing picture of manipulation and control. I know this was a heavy one, but these stories need to be told. If you're feeling it, give this video a thumbs up and share it to spread awareness. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our true crime community. For those of you who've been here a while, you know I appreciate you. Thanks for sticking around. The honeymoon phase didn't last long. Randy's true colors began to show, and the loving facade crumbled, revealing a terrifying reality for Dorothy and her children. It started subtly, a harsh word, a dismissive gesture, a sudden outburst of anger. Then it escalated, yelling, screaming, objects thrown across the room. The children, once carefree and playful, became withdrawn and fearful. Their laughter was replaced by a tense silence, their eyes constantly darting with anxiety. The physical abuse began gradually, a slap on the wrist, a shove, a hard pinch. Then it intensified, beatings with belts, punches, burns from cigarettes. The children's bodies became canvases of pain, covered in bruises, welts, and scars. Their cries for help were met with threats and further violence. Imagine the terror these children must have felt, trapped in their own home with no escape from their tormentor. Their own mother, the person they should have been able to rely on for protection, was unable or unwilling to shield them from harm. Their world, once safe and secure, had become a prison of fear and pain. Didn't Dorothy protect her children? Was she afraid of Randy's wrath? Was she manipulated and controlled by him? Or was there something more at play? The answers are complex and disturbing, revealing a tragic cycle of abuse and codependency. Evangelina, the youngest and most vulnerable, suffered the worst of the abuse. Randy seemed to single her out for particularly cruel treatment. He would lock her in a dog cage for hours, depriving her of food, water, and human contact. He would burn her with cigarettes, leaving permanent scars on her delicate skin. The autopsy report would later reveal the full extent of Evangelina's suffering. Broken bones, internal bleeding, head trauma. Her tiny body bore the marks of months of relentless abuse. It was a catalog of horrors, a testament to the unimaginable cruelty she endured. How could a mother stand by and watch her children suffer such unimaginable cruelty? Was she complicit in the abuse, or was she trapped in a web of fear and manipulation, unable to break free? The truth is more complicated than it seems, and it leads us to a deeper understanding of the dynamics of domestic violence and child abuse. Seaside, Oregon. A charming coastal town, seemingly idyllic. A place where neighbors know each other, children play freely, and the pace of life is slow and relaxed. But behind this picture-perfect facade, a hidden horror was unfolding. Within the walls of this unassuming apartment building, Evangelina and her brothers were enduring unimaginable suffering. But to the outside world, everything seemed normal. No one suspected the nightmare that was taking place just a few feet away. Neighbors would later recall hearing occasional noises coming from the apartment, a child's cry, a raised voice, a thud against the wall. But these were often dismissed as the typical sounds of a busy family. No one thought to question, no one thought to intervene. At school, teachers noticed changes in Evangelina's brothers. They were once bright and engaged students, but now they seemed withdrawn, anxious, and prone to outbursts. They had difficulty concentrating, and their grades began to slip. On several occasions, teachers observed bruises and marks on the boys. When questioned, they offered vague explanations, a fall on the playground, a roughhousing incident with their sister. The teachers, wanting to believe the best, accepted these explanations at face value. Were there missed opportunities to intervene? Did anyone suspect the full extent of the abuse? Records show that Child Protection Services had been contacted in the past regarding the Wing family, but the reports were either unsubstantiated or deemed low priority. The system, already overburdened and underfunded, failed to connect the dots. This case highlights a disturbing reality. Child abuse often happens in plain sight. It hides behind closed doors, masked by normalcy and the reluctance of others to get involved. We, as a community, have a responsibility to be vigilant, to recognize the signs, and to speak up when we suspect something is wrong. What if someone had intervened? What if a neighbor had knocked on the door? A teacher had pressed for more answers? A social worker had investigated further? Could Evangelina's tragic fate have been avoided? The answer is a haunting one, and it underscores the urgent need for greater awareness and action in our communities. November 20th, 2014. A date etched in tragedy. A day that began like any other in the Wing household, but would end in unimaginable heartbreak. The morning was cold and gray, a reflection of the darkness that had enveloped this family. Dorothy was at work, leaving the children in Randy's care. He was reportedly in a foul mood, agitated and easily angered. Evangelina, just 2 years old, was the primary target of his rage that day. The exact details of what happened behind that closed bedroom door remain shrouded in secrecy, a testament to the unspeakable acts that took place. At 10:53 a.m., a desperate 911 call was made from the apartment. The caller, later identified as Randy Roden, reported that Evangelina was unresponsive and not breathing. His voice was panicked, his words laced with a chilling detachment. Emergency responders arrived at the scene within minutes. They found Evangelina lying lifeless in her bed, her tiny body covered in bruises and marks. Paramedics frantically attempted to revive her, but it was too late. Evangelina was pronounced dead at the scene. Her body was transported to the hospital, where a team of medical professionals would begin the grim task of documenting the extent of her injuries. The autopsy report would later reveal a horrifying catalog of abuse. Broken bones, internal bleeding, head trauma, and evidence of sexual assault. Evangelina's small body bore the marks of months of relentless cruelty, a testament to the unimaginable suffering she endured. Evangelina's short life was brutally extinguished, but her death was not just a tragic accident. It was the culmination of months of escalating abuse, neglect, and systemic failures. The question now becomes, who is responsible for this unspeakable crime? And how can we prevent such tragedies from happening again? Evangelina's death triggered an immediate and intense investigation by the Seaside Police Department. Detectives meticulously combed the apartment for evidence, photographing every detail, collecting every potential clue. The apartment was a grim tableau. Signs of neglect and abuse were everywhere. The children's bedrooms were bare and unkempt, with no personal touches or toys. The bathroom was filthy, with overflowing garbage cans and a lingering stench of urine. Investigators interviewed neighbors, teachers, and anyone who had contact with the Wing family. A disturbing pattern emerged. Neighbors reported hearing frequent arguments and children crying. Teachers recounted instances of unexplained injuries and behavioral changes in Evangelina's brothers. Randy Roden was immediately brought in for questioning. He initially denied any involvement in Evangelina's death, claiming she had fallen out of bed. But his story quickly unraveled under scrutiny. His demeanor was evasive, his explanations contradictory. Rhoden was subjected to a polygraph test, which he failed miserably. Confronted with the mounting evidence against him, he finally cracked. He admitted to physically abusing Evangelina and her brothers, but he maintained that he had not intended to kill her. Dorothy Wing was also questioned extensively. She initially defended Rhoden, claiming he was a good father figure to her children, but as the evidence mounted, she began to break down. She admitted to witnessing some of the abuse, but claimed she was too afraid of Rhoden to intervene. Both Rhoden and Wing were arrested and charged in connection with Evangelina's death. Rhoden faced a slew of charges including murder by abuse, felony murder, manslaughter, assault, and criminal mistreatment. Dorothy Wing was charged with manslaughter and criminal mistreatment for her failure to protect her children. The prosecution's case was strong, the medical evidence was overwhelming, and witness testimony painted a damning picture of abuse and neglect. But the defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial, and that neither Rhoden nor Wing intended to kill Evangelina. The jury was faced with a difficult decision. Would they find Randy Roden and Dorothy Wing guilty of the horrific crimes they were accused of? Or would they accept the defense's arguments and deliver a verdict that would shock the community and leave Evangelina without justice? The trial of Randy Roden and Dorothy Wing was a media sensation. Reporters from across the country flocked to the small Oregon town, eager to cover the shocking case of child abuse and murder. The courtroom was filled with a mix of emotions: outrage, grief, and a thirst for justice. Evangelina's family and friends were present, their faces etched with sorrow and anger. Community members, strangers touched by the tragedy, came to show their support. The prosecution presented a compelling case. They meticulously laid out the evidence, detailing the horrific abuse Evangelina endured. Medical experts testified about the extent of her injuries, leaving no doubt that she had suffered a prolonged and agonizing death. Dorothy Wing, as part of a plea deal, testified against Randy Roden. She recounted instances of abuse, admitting her own failure to protect her children. Her testimony was emotional and heartbreaking, revealing the complex dynamics of their relationship and the grip Rhoden had on her. Rhoden's defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that there was no direct proof he intended to kill Evangelina. They painted a picture of a man struggling with anger management issues, who had gone too far in disciplining a child. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Randy Roden was found guilty of murder by abuse, felony murder, manslaughter, assault, and criminal mistreatment. He was sentenced to nearly 40 years in prison, a sentence that reflected the severity of his crimes. Dorothy Wing was also found guilty of manslaughter and criminal mistreatment. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, a sentence that acknowledged her role in Evangelina's death, but also considered her cooperation with the prosecution and her own victimization at the hands of Rhoden. The verdicts brought a sense of closure to Evangelina's family and the community. Justice had been served, but the pain of her loss would linger forever. The case sparked a conversation about child abuse, domestic violence, and the systemic failures that allowed this tragedy to occur. Was justice truly served? Can any sentence truly compensate for the loss of an innocent life? Evangelina's case raises important questions about accountability, prevention, and the need for systemic change to protect vulnerable children. Evangelina Wing, a little girl with a bright smile and a contagious laugh, a life cut tragically short, leaving a void in the hearts of those who loved her. For Evangelina's family, the pain of her loss is immeasurable. Her brothers, now without their little sister, struggle to understand why she was taken from them. They carry the scars of their own abuse, both physical and emotional, and face a long road to healing. The family has sought therapy and counseling to help them cope with their grief and trauma. They have found solace in sharing their story and connecting with other families who have experienced similar tragedies. Evangelina's death had a profound impact on the community of Seaside. Residents were shocked and heartbroken that such a horrific crime could happen in their own backyard. They came together to support the Wing family, to raise awareness about child abuse, and to demand change. A leading expert on child abuse explains the devastating impact of these crimes on children, families, and communities. Child abuse is a pervasive problem, she says, and it often goes unreported. We need to be vigilant, to recognize the signs, and to take action to protect children. A child advocate stresses the importance of prevention and early intervention. We need to invest in programs that support families and provide them with the resources they need to thrive, he says. We need to educate children about their rights and empower them to speak up if they are being abused. Evangelina's story resonated across the nation, sparking a national conversation about child abuse and the systemic failures that often allow it to happen. Her case highlighted the need for better training for professionals who work with children, improved communication between agencies, and increased funding for child protection services. People from all walks of life were touched by Evangelina's story. They shared her story on social media, donated to charities in her name, and contacted their elected officials to demand change. Evangelina's legacy, though born from tragedy, became a catalyst for awareness and action. Evangelina's death left a deep wound in the hearts of many, but her story also sparked a movement, a collective determination to protect children and prevent future tragedies. The question now becomes, how can we turn this grief and outrage into meaningful change? How can we ensure that Evangelina's legacy is one of hope and healing? Evangelina's tragic death exposed cracks in the very system designed to protect children like her. The child welfare system, often overwhelmed and underfunded, struggled to keep up with the growing number of abuse cases. Child Protective Services, the front line of defense for vulnerable children, is often understaffed and overworked. Caseworkers are burdened with enormous caseloads, making it difficult to thoroughly investigate every report and provide adequate support to families. Law enforcement plays a crucial role in responding to child abuse cases, but officers often lack the specialized training to recognize the subtle signs of abuse and to effectively interview child victims. The court system, tasked with making critical decisions about the safety and well-being of children, can be slow and cumbersome. Cases can drag on for months, leaving children in limbo and potentially exposing them to further harm. The statistics are alarming. Every year, thousands of children die from abuse and neglect in the United States. Children in poverty, children of color, and children with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Advocates for child welfare reform point to a number of systemic issues that need to be addressed. These include inadequate funding for child protection services, a lack of specialized training for professionals, inconsistent reporting and investigation procedures, and a need for greater collaboration between agencies. Efforts are underway to improve the child welfare system. Some states are implementing innovative programs that focus on prevention, early intervention, and family support. Communities are coming together to raise awareness about child abuse and to create safer environments for children. Evangelina's case serves as a stark reminder of the urgent need for systemic change. We must do better. We must invest in the resources and training necessary to protect our most vulnerable citizens. The question is, will we learn from the past and take action to prevent future tragedies? Or will we continue to fail the children who need us most? In the wake of tragedy, there is hope. We can learn from Evangelina's story and take action to prevent future tragedies. We can create a world where every child feels safe, loved, and protected. Prevention starts with awareness. We need to educate ourselves about the signs and symptoms of child abuse. We need to learn how to recognize the red flags and how to respond appropriately. There are many resources available to help prevent child abuse. Organizations like the National Child Abuse Hotline, the Child Help USA, and Prevent Child Abuse America offer valuable information, support, and guidance. Early intervention is crucial. If we suspect a child is being abused, we need to act quickly. We can report our concerns to Child Protective Services or law enforcement. We can also offer support to the family, connecting them with resources and services that can help. We can all play a role in preventing child abuse. We can be a positive role model for children in our lives. We can offer support to parents who are struggling. We can create safe and nurturing environments for children in our communities. By raising awareness, supporting families, and taking action, we can make a difference. We can break the cycle of abuse and create a brighter future for all children. If you want to get involved, there are many ways to help. You can volunteer your time at a local child advocacy center. You can donate to organizations working to prevent child abuse. You can educate yourself and others about the issue. Every action, no matter how small, can make a difference. Evangelina's story is a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of child abuse, but it is also a call to action. We can honor her memory by working together to create a world where every child feels safe, loved, and protected. Will you join us in this important mission? Evangelina Wing, a precious life taken too soon, but her memory lives on, a reminder of the innocence we must protect and the love we must cherish. Let us remember Evangelina, not for the horror she endured, but for the joy she brought into the world. Let us remember her infectious laughter, her love for her family, her zest for life. She was a little girl who loved to sing and dance, who found joy in the simplest things, who brought smiles to the faces of those around her. Her spirit, though extinguished too soon, continues to shine brightly in the hearts of those who knew and loved her. Evangelina's legacy is one of resilience, of hope, of the enduring power of love. Her story has touched countless lives, inspiring a movement to protect children and prevent future tragedies. Her memory serves as a constant reminder that we must never forget the innocent victims of child abuse. We must honor their lives by taking action to create a safer world for all children. Let us remember Evangelina not with sadness, but with a renewed determination to make a difference. Let us channel our grief into action, our outrage into advocacy, our love into lasting change. We can all be a voice for the voiceless. We can all be a force for change. We can all help to create a world where every child is safe, loved, and protected. Remember Evangelina, remember her story, and remember that we all have a role to play in preventing child abuse. Together, we can create a brighter future for all children. Evangelina Wing's story is a tragedy, a stark reminder of the darkness that can exist in the world, but it is also a story of hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collective action. We have learned that child abuse is a pervasive problem affecting children of all ages, races, and socioeconomic backgrounds. We have learned that it often hides in plain sight, masked by secrecy and shame. We have learned that there are resources available to help prevent child abuse and support those who have been affected. We have learned that we all have a role to play in protecting children and creating safer communities. We have learned that even in the darkest of times, there is hope for healing and change. We have learned that by working together, we can break the cycle of abuse and create a brighter future for all children. Evangelina's legacy is one of awareness, of action, of a community united in its commitment to protect children. Her story has sparked a movement, a collective determination to ensure that no child suffers in silence. Let us honor Evangelina's memory by carrying her legacy forward. Let us be a voice for the voiceless. Let us work tirelessly to create a world where every child is safe, loved, and protected. We can all make a difference. We can educate ourselves about the signs of child abuse. We can report suspected abuse to the authorities. We can support families in need. We can advocate for policies that protect children. Change is happening. Around the world, communities are taking action to prevent child abuse and support survivors. But there is still much work to be done. We must continue to raise awareness, advocate for change, and invest in prevention and intervention programs. Let us work together to build a world where every child has the opportunity to thrive, to reach their full potential, and to live a life free from fear and violence. This documentary is dedicated to the memory of Evangelina Wing and all victims of child abuse. May their stories inspire us to create a world where every child is safe.